Dear Grant stared at the readings on her scanner with growing excitement. For 3 days, she had been studying the energy patterns from the planet's core, and finally she had found something that might work. The abandoned mining facility buzzed with activity as humans and Zephyrians worked together to understand the hunger. "Jake, you need to see this," she called out as Commander Morrison approached her workstation. Around them, Ben Torres and Zilara were testing a new hybrid weapon, while Amy Carter practiced combat maneuvers with young Zephyrian pilots. "What have you found, Lisa?" Jake asked as he looked at the complex energy readings displayed on her screens. "I've been analyzing the hunger's feeding patterns," Dr. Grant explained. "It consumes organized psychic energy by matching the frequency patterns of its victims. But look at this." She pointed to a section of the readout that showed chaotic spikes and irregular waves. "Those are human brainwave patterns," Jake realized. "From when Lirale and I did the neural link." "Exactly. And see how the hunger reacts when it encounters them." Dr. Grant highlighted a section where the dark energy seemed to recoil from the human thought patterns. "It can't process the randomness. Human consciousness is too chaotic for it to understand or consume." Princess Lirale joined them at the workstation. Over the past few days, she had changed even more. Her movements now showed a mixture of Zephyrian grace and human determination. Her crystal skin seemed brighter, as if the neural link had awakened something new within her. "This confirms what I suspected," she said. "The hunger feeds on predictable patterns. It grew strong by consuming the ordered thoughts of my ancestors, but human minds work differently." Counselor Valdris approached their group. The old Zephyrian had spent the last 3 days observing the cooperation between the species. Jake could see that his attitude was slowly changing as he witnessed what they could accomplish together. "If human thoughts can resist the hunger, then perhaps we can. Use that resistance as a weapon," Valdris suggested. "Could we project human thought patterns into the creature's feeding areas?" "It's more complex than that," Dr. Grant replied. "The hunger doesn't just feed on thoughts. It consumes the life force that powers psychic abilities. To truly hurt it, we would need to introduce human consciousness directly into Zephyrian systems." Jake felt a chill as he realized what she was suggesting. "You're talking about more neural links. Many more." "That is correct, Commander," Lirale said quietly. "To defeat the hunger, we would need to link human and Zephyrian minds on a massive scale. It will create a new form of consciousness that the creature cannot consume." Ben Torres looked up from his weapon testing. "The hybrid technology is working great, but we're talking about changing your entire species. That's not just dangerous, it's permanent." Corvex joined the conversation with several other young Zephyrians. "We have been discussing this possibility. Princess, many of us are willing to undergo the transformation if it means saving our people. But the Council will never agree to such a radical change," Valdris said. "They see any alteration to pure Zephyrian consciousness as corruption." "Then, we don't ask for their permission," Amy Carter said as she walked over from the flight training area. "We start with volunteers and prove that it works." Jake studied the faces around him. Humans and Zephyrians working together with a trust that would have been impossible just a week ago. "How many people will we need for this to work?" "Base. On the energy calculations, at least 1,000 linked pairs," Dr. Grant replied. "And they would need to be positioned throughout the planet's energy grid to create a disruption field that the hunger cannot penetrate." Lirale moved to the center of the group. "I will be the first to undergo permanent neural linking. If it works, then others will follow. If it fails, then at least we will have tried." "Princess, the risks are enormous," Valdris warned. "You could lose your identity completely. You might become neither human nor Zephyrian, but something else entirely." "Then, I will become something new," Lirale replied with human determination. "Something that can save both our peoples." The discussion was interrupted by alarms echoing through the facility. Zilara rushed to the monitoring station where energy readings from the planet were spiking wildly. "The containment barriers are failing faster than predicted," she reported. "The hunger is breaking through the outer seals. Jake looked at the displays showing massive energy discharges beneath Ethros. How long do we have? Days, not weeks, Dr. Grant said after checking her calculations. The creature is using the failed barriers as additional food sources. Each one it consumes makes it stronger. Then we implement the solution now, Jake decided. Princess, are you ready for permanent neural linking? I have been ready since the moment I first touched your mind, Lirelei replied. But Commander, this process will change you as well. Are you prepared to become something that has never existed? Before Jake thought about his crew and the billions of humans who would never know about this crisis, he thought about the beautiful crystal cities of Ethros and the gentle people who had welcomed them despite their fears. Most of all, he thought about the young Zephyrians who were willing to risk everything for a chance at survival. Let's do it, he said simply. The permanent neural linking process was far more complex than their first brief connection. Corvex and Ben had built a special chamber using hybrid technology that could maintain the link indefinitely. The device looked like a fusion of human engineering and Zephyrian energy manipulation. The process will take several hours, Corvex explained as Jake and Lirelei prepared to enter the chamber. Your consciousness will be permanently altered. You will retain your individual identities, but you will also share a connection that can never be broken. What about the others? Jake asked. How do we convince 1,000 people to undergo this transformation? We show them that it works, Amy said firmly. If you two can prove that human and Zephyrian minds can truly merge, then volunteers will come forward. Dr. Grant activated the monitoring equipment. I'll track the process from here. If anything goes wrong, we can abort the procedure. Jake and Lirelei entered the chamber and sat facing each other. The walls began to glow with energy patterns that pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. Jake felt the familiar sensation of his consciousness expanding, but this time it was different. Instead of a temporary connection, he felt his mind permanently intertwining with Lirelei's. The transformation was beautiful and terrifying. Jake experienced Lirelei's memories of growing up in the Crystal Cities and her deep love for her people. She felt his determination to protect others and his stubborn refusal to accept defeat. But more than sharing memories, they began to think. As one being with two perspectives, hours passed as their minds merged completely. When the process was finished, Jake and Lirelei emerged from the chamber fundamentally changed. They were still themselves, but they were also something new. A hybrid consciousness that combined the best of both species. How do you feel, Dr. Grant? Asked as she checked their vital signs. Different, Jake replied. I can sense energy patterns that I never noticed before. And I understand the hunger in a way that no pure human could. I feel emotions that Zephyrians have never experienced. Lirelei added. Anger at injustice and hope in the face of impossible odds. These feelings give me strength I never knew I possessed. Ben Torres was monitoring the planet's energy readings. The hunger is reacting to your transformation. It's trying to probe your consciousness, but it can't find a way in. Because we are chaos and order working together, Jake said. The creature can handle one or the other, but not both at the same time. Valdris approached them with wonder in his glowing eyes. You are both changed, but you are still yourselves. This transformation preserves identity while creating something greater. Will you help us convince others to undergo the process? Lirelei asked her uncle. I will undergo it myself, Valdris replied. If an old counselor can change, then perhaps others will follow. Word of the successful transformation spread quickly through the renewal movement. Young Zephyrians began arriving at the facility with human volunteers who had answered Amy's call for help. The neural linking process was repeated again and again. As more hybrid pairs were created, each new transformation weakened the hunger's hold on the planet. The creature found itself facing a form of consciousness it could not understand or consume. But Jake knew they were racing against time. The final containment barriers were failing, and soon the hunger will be free to consume the galaxy. We need to take the fight directly to the source, Jake told the assembled group of hybrid pairs. The hunger is strongest in the deep places beneath the planet. That's where we need to make our stand. Lirelei nodded with their shared determination. Then we go into the darkness and bring the light of human chaos to drive it back. The final battle for the survival of both species was about to begin. The crystal chamber shuddered as energy weapons charged throughout the city. Jake grabbed Lirelei's arm as the floor beneath them began to crack from the massive power buildup. Through the transparent walls, he could see Zephyrian fighters surrounding the Meridian while more ships rose from the spires. "Princess, we need to get out of here now," Jake said urgently. His communicator crackled with Amy's voice reporting that the ship's shields were under heavy scanning beams. "Counselor," Valdris raised his hand, and the chamber filled with binding energy that wrapped around Jake like glowing chains. "The human will remain here until the council decides his fate. Princess, you will be confined to your quarters until you come to your senses." But Lirelei was no longer the obedient royal she had been. Before the neural link, she stepped forward and her own energy blazed to life around her hands. "I think not, Uncle. I choose my own path now." What happened next shocked everyone in the chamber. Lirelei attacked Valdris with a fighting style that no Zephyrian had ever seen before. Where traditional Zephyrian combat was graceful and flowing, she fought with the aggressive directness that Jake recognized as purely human. She feinted left, then struck right in a pattern that confused Valdris completely. Her energy blast came in rapid bursts instead of the sustained beams that Zephyrians normally used. Within seconds, she had overwhelmed his defenses and sent him crashing into the chamber wall. "Impossible," Valdris gasped as he struggled to his feet. "No Zephyrian fights like that." "I am not the same Zephyrian I was yesterday," Lirelei replied. She gestured, and the energy bonds holding Jake dissolved. "Commander Morrison, we need to reach your ship immediately." Jake activated his communicator as they ran through the crystal corridors. "Amy, prepare for emergency departure." "We're coming in hot." "Already on it, Commander," Amy's voice replied. "Ben's got the engine spun up and Dr. Grant is tracking the fighter formations. We can be airborne in 30 seconds. But as they reached the main level of the spire, Jake saw that their path to the landing platform was blocked by a squad of Zephyrian guards. The warriors moved to intercept them with energy weapons already charging. "Stand down, Princess," called the squad leader. "By order of the council, you are under arrest for treason." Lirelei looked at Jake with eyes that now held human determination. "Commander, I hope your people are as good at fighting as they are at thinking." "We're about to find out," Jake replied. He pulled out his sidearm, knowing that human projectile weapons would be useless against Zephyrian energy shields. But Lirelei surprised him again. She reached out with her mind and somehow disrupted the guards' weapons. The energy cells overloaded and exploded in their hands, leaving them stunned and defenseless. "How did you do that?" Jake asked as they ran past the confused guards. "Human creativity applied to Zephyrian technology," Lirelei replied. "Your people think in ways that our defenses were never designed to handle." They burst out onto the landing platform to find the Meridian surrounded by energy fighters. The human ship looked small and primitive compared to the graceful Zephyrian vessels, but Jake had never been happier to see it. Amy's voice crackled through his communicator. "Commander, the fighters are demanding we surrender. They're threatening to disable our engines if we try to leave." "Tell them we're taking off now," Jake replied as he and Lirelei ran up the ship's ramp. "If they want to stop us, they'll have to shoot us down." The Meridian lifted off with energy bolts flashing around it. Amy's piloting skills were put to the test as she weaved between the Zephyrian fighters. The alien ships were faster and more maneuverable, but Amy flew with the unpredictable style that made human pilots so effective. "Where can we go?" Jake asked Lirelei as the ship shook under enemy fire. "Your people control this entire system. There are others who think like I do." "Now," Lirelei replied, "young Zephyrians who believe our species must change to survive. I know where we can find them." She directed Amy to a small moon on the edge of the system where abandoned mining facilities dotted the rocky surface. The Meridian slipped into a deep canyon, and landed in a hidden bay that looked like it had been carved from the stone. This place was used for energy crystal mining centuries ago, Lirelei explained as they disembarked. It was abandoned when better sources were found, but some of the equipment still works. They were met by a group of young Zephyrians who looked different from the ones Jake had seen in the city. These beings moved with more individual purpose, and their energy robes showed less formal patterns. Leading them was a Zephyrian named Corvex, who greeted Lirelei with obvious relief. "Princess, we heard about the council session," Corvex said. "Word is spreading that you have been declared a traitor for helping the humans." "I am helping to save our people," Lirelei replied firmly. "The council would rather preserve their pride than preserve our lives." Jake studied the group of young Zephyrians and realized they were all looking at him with curiosity rather than fear. "How many of you are there?" he asked. "Perhaps 200 scattered across the system," Corvex replied. "We call ourselves the Renewal Movement. We believe the Zephyrian people must learn to change and adapt, or we will become extinct." Dr. Grant stepped forward with her scanner active. "I'm reading massive energy disturbances from the planet's core. Whatever is down there is getting much stronger." Lirelei nodded grimly. "The hunger grows bolder as the containment barriers weaken. We have perhaps 4 months before it breaks free." "Then we need to act fast," Jake said. "What do you need from us?" Corvex led them deeper into the mining facility where other Zephyrians were working, with equipment that looked different from what Jake had seen in the city. The technology was still energy-based, but it seemed more practical and less elegant. "We have been studying human transmissions for months," Corvex explained. "Your engineering methods are crude but effective. We believe combining human techniques with Zephyrian technology might create weapons that could fight the hunger." Ben Torres looked around the workshop with growing excitement. "You want to build hybrid technology, human engineering principles, with Zephyrian power sources." "Exactly," said a female Zephyrian named Zilara. "Our traditional weapons are useless against the hunger because they operate on the same psychic frequencies that it feeds upon. But human technology uses electromagnetic principles that might disrupt its energy patterns." Amy studied the fighter craft that the Zephyrians were modifying. "These ships look different from the ones that chased us." "We have been experimenting with more aggressive designs," Corvex replied. "Traditional Zephyrian combat emphasizes grace and efficiency. But human tactics suggest that sometimes brute force and unpredictability are more effective." Jake watched as his crew began working with the young Zephyrians. Ben was already deep in conversation with Zilara about power coupling systems. Amy was examining the modified fighters with obvious interest. Dr. Grant was comparing notes with Corvex about energy resonance patterns. "This could actually work," Jake said to Lirelei. "Your people have the power and we have the methods. The question is whether we can perfect the technology before the hunger escapes," Lirelei replied, "and whether we can convince enough people to use it." As if summoned by her words, a new voice spoke from the entrance to the facility. "Princess Lirelei, you are under arrest by order of the High Council." Jake turned to see Counselor Valdres enter with a squad of elite guards. The old Zephyrian's crystal skin blazed with anger, and his energy robes crackled with barely contained power. "Uncle, you cannot stop what has already begun," Lirelei said calmly. "The Renewal Movement will continue with or without me." "The Renewal Movement is a collection of confused children who have been contaminated by alien influence," Valdres replied. "You will all be cleansed of this corruption and return to proper Zephyrian thinking." But Jake noticed something that Valdres had missed. The young Zephyrians were not backing down. Instead, they were moving to defensive positions with weapons that looked nothing like traditional Zephyrian designs. "Counselor," Jake said, stepping forward, "your people are in danger. The hunger is real, and it's getting stronger. We're trying to save lives here." "Human lives," Valdres spat. "You seek to weaken our civilization with fear and doubt. The Zephyrian Empire has survived for 50,000 years without outside help, and it will die in 4 months if you don't accept that help," Lirelei said. "Uncle, I have seen what the hunger can do. I have felt its presence in the deep places beneath our cities. It is not a weapon or a lie. It is death itself. The confrontation was interrupted by a tremor that shook the entire moon. In the distance, Jake could see energy discharges flickering across the surface of Ethros. The hunger was testing the barriers that contained it. The containment grid is fluctuating, Dr. Grant reported as she checked her instruments. Whatever is down there just tried to break free. Valdra stared at the planet with growing horror. That cannot be possible. The ancient seals were designed to last forever. Nothing lasts forever, Uncle, Lirelei said sadly. That is what the humans have taught me. Everything changes, and those who cannot adapt will perish. The old counselor looked at his niece with new understanding. You truly believe this threat is real? I know it is real, Lirelei replied. The question is whether you will help us fight it or continue to pretend it does not exist. Valdris lowered his. Jake returned to his quarters to find his team waiting with worried expressions. Amy jumped up from her energy chair as soon as he entered the room. Jake, you've been gone for 3 hours, she said. We were starting to think something had happened. To you. The princess gave me an extended tour of the city, Jake replied carefully. He could not tell them about the neural link without putting them all in danger. She wanted to show me some of their historical sites before the council meeting. There, Grant looked up from her datapad, where she had been analyzing energy readings. I've been detecting some unusual fluctuations in the planetary energy grid. There seems to be some kind of disturbance in the lower levels of the city. Jake felt his pulse quicken. The hunger was getting stronger even as they spoke. What kind of disturbance, Lisa? It's hard to say without better equipment, but it feels like something is draining power from the main energy systems. The Zephyrians might be having technical problems they haven't told us about. Before Jake could respond, Princess Lirelei appeared in the doorway. Her crystal skin was paler than before, and her energy robes flickered with unstable patterns. Jake could see that the neural link had affected her more than she had let on. Commander Morrison, the council is ready to begin the formal session, she said. Her voice was different, now carrying an edge of urgency that had not been there before. The team followed Lirelei through the crystal corridors to a vast chamber at the heart of the spire. The council chamber was a sphere of pure energy suspended in the center of a hollow tower. 12 Zephyrian counselors sat on thrones of crystallized light, arranged in a circle around the room. Counselor Valdra stood as they entered. His tall form radiated authority, and his glowing eyes fixed on Jake with obvious suspicion. Commander Morrison, welcome to the High Council of Ethros. We have agreed to hear your proposal for diplomatic relations between our peoples. Jake stepped forward and gave a formal bow. Honored counselors, we come seeking friendship and mutual cooperation between Earth and Ethros. Our species may be different, but we believe we can learn much from each other. Another counselor named Corvus spoke up. What exactly does humanity offer in exchange for our knowledge, Commander? Your technology is primitive by our standards, and your lifespans are brief compared to ours. We offer perspective, Counselor, Jake replied. Humans approach problems differently than other species. We specialize in finding solutions that others might not consider. Valdris's mental voice touched Jake's mind with cold formality. You speak of solutions, human, but what problems do you imagine we face? The Zephyrian civilization has endured for 50,000 years. We have mastered the fundamental forces of the universe. Jake felt Lirelei's eyes on him and knew she was waiting to see if he would reveal what she had told him. He chose his words carefully. All civilizations face challenges, Counselor. Sometimes an outside perspective can reveal possibilities that are difficult to see from within. How presumptuous, said Counselor Zareth from across the circle. This primitive species believes it can teach us things we do not already know. Princess Lirelei stepped forward unexpectedly. Perhaps we should listen to what the humans have to offer before dismissing them, Father. The chamber fell silent. Jake realized that Zareth was Lirelei's father, and that she had just challenged him publicly. This was clearly not normal behavior. For a Zephyrian princess, Valdris's eyes narrowed as he studied Lirelei. Princess, your enthusiasm for these aliens is noted but inappropriate. The council will make its decisions based on logic, not emotion. Of course, counselor, Lirelei replied, but Jake caught the defiance in her tone. The neural link had definitely changed her. She was acting more like a human than a Zephyrian. The session continued for another hour with the council asking pointed questions about human intentions and capabilities. Jake did his best to present humanity in a positive light while his team provided technical details about Earth's technology and culture, but Jake could sense growing hostility from most of the counselors. They saw humans as primitive upstarts who had no business dealing with advanced civilizations. Only Lirelei seemed supportive, and her behavior was making the others suspicious. Finally, Valdris called for a recess. The council will deliberate on what we have heard. You will have our decision by tomorrow, Commander Morrison. As the counselors filed out, Jake noticed several of them speaking in hushed telepathic conversations while glancing at Princess Lirelei. Something was definitely wrong. Princess, Jake said quietly as they left the chamber. Can I speak with you privately? Lirelei nodded and led him to a small alcove overlooking the city. They suspect something, she said without preamble. Valdris has been monitoring my thoughts more closely than usual. He knows I am different, but he does not yet understand why. Maybe we should tell them the truth about the hunger, Jake suggested. If they knew their world was in danger, they might be more willing to accept help. No, Lirelei said firmly. The council would rather die than admit weakness to outsiders. They would see it as a betrayal of everything our people stand for. Before Jake could respond, his communicator buzzed with an incoming message from the Meridian. Amy's voice crackled through the device with obvious tension. Commander, we're receiving an emergency transmission from Earth Fleet Command. Admiral Sullivan wants to speak with you immediately. Jake felt his heart sink. Put her through Amy. Admiral Kate Sullivan's stern face appeared on the small screen. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her expression was grim. Commander Morrison, I'm ordering you to terminate the diplomatic mission and return to Earth immediately. Admiral, what's happened? Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew. Intelligence reports suggest that the Zephyrians are planning some kind of action against human colonies. There are rumors of a secret weapon that could threaten our entire expansion effort. I want you and your team off that planet before you become hostages. Jake glanced at Lirelei, who had gone very still. Admiral, I believe those reports are mistaken. The Zephyrians are facing their own crisis right now. That's an order, Commander, not a request, Sullivan said sharply. You have 12 hours to conclude your business and depart Ethros. If you're not in hyperspace by then, I'll send the 5th Fleet to extract you. The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at the blank screen. Lirelei moved closer, and her crystal features showed desperation. Your people know about the hunger, she whispered. Someone has been feeding them information about our situation, but twisting it to make us look like a threat. Jake thought quickly. Who would have access to that kind of classified information? Only the council members and a few senior technicians. Lirelei replied. Someone wants to prevent any cooperation between our species. As if summoned by their conversation counselor, Valdris appeared in the alcove. His energy rose blazed with barely controlled power, and his glowing eyes were fixed on Lirelei. Princess, you will come with me immediately, he said. The council has questions about your recent behavior. I am escorting our guest counselor, Lirelei replied with false calm. Surely my duties as a hostess take precedence. Your duties are to your people, not to alien visitors, Valdris snapped. There are reports that you have been sharing classified information with the humans. This is treason of the highest order. Jake stepped forward instinctively to protect Lirelei. Counselor, the princess has been nothing but helpful during our visit. She has told us only what any diplomatic host would share. Valdris turned his attention to Jake, and the human felt the full force of a Zephyrian mind probing his thoughts. It was like having ice water poured directly into his brain. But something unexpected happened. The chaotic nature of human consciousness that had protected him from the hunger also made him resistant to Zephyrian telepathy. Interesting, Valdris said after a moment. Your mind is remarkably well shielded for a primitive species. Almost. As if you have been exposed to advanced psychic techniques. Jake felt Lirelay tense beside him. If Valdris discovered the neural link, they were both dead. Commander Morrison, came Amy's voice through his communicator. We're detecting multiple Zephyrian vessels approaching our position. They don't appear to be friendly. Jake looked out at the city below and saw streams of energy fighters rising from the crystal spires. The graceful ships moved in perfect formation as they surrounded the landing platform where the Meridian waited. It seems your people are concerned about our presence here, Valdris said with cold satisfaction. Perhaps it would be best if you left Ethros immediately. And if we refuse, Jake asked, then you will discover why the Zephyrian Empire has survived for 50,000 years, Valdris replied. Princess Lirelay will remain here to answer for her actions. You and your crew will be escorted to the edge of our system and warned never to return. Jake felt the walls closing in around them. Earthfleet thought the Zephyrians were a threat, and the Zephyrian Council thought humans were dangerous primitives. Meanwhile, the hunger grew stronger with each passing hour. There has to be another way, Jake said desperately. Lirelay looked at him with eyes that now held human determination mixed with Zephyrian wisdom. There is, Commander. But it will require us to break every law of both our peoples. She turned to face Valdris with her chin raised defiantly. Jake stared at Princess Lirelay as her words echoed in the crystal corridor. The idea that an advanced species like the Zephyrians could be dying seemed impossible. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity, and they commanded powers that humans could barely understand. What do you mean your people are dying princes? Jake asked quietly. He glanced around to make sure they were alone before continuing. Your civilization appears to be thriving. Lirelay's glowing eyes dimmed slightly, and she gestured for him to follow her deeper into the spire. They walked through passages that seemed to bend and shift around them as if the building itself was alive. Finally, she stopped at a small chamber with walls that pulsed with soft blue light. This room is shielded from telepathic observation, she said. What I am about to tell you could be considered treason by the Council. She moved to the center of the room and her energy robes flickered nervously. 3 years ago, our scientists discovered something in the deep archives. Records of an experiment conducted by our ancestors 5,000 years ago. Jake listened carefully as Lirelay explained how the ancient Zephyrians had tried to enhance their psychic abilities by creating what they called an energy amplifier. The device was meant to strengthen their connection to the cosmic forces that powered their civilization. Instead, it had created something terrible. They called it the hunger, Lirelay continued. It feeds on psychic energy and grows stronger with each mind it consumes. Our ancestors managed to contain it deep beneath the planet's surface, but it has been growing in power ever since. The princess showed Jake a crystal that projected images into the air. Jake saw vast underground chambers filled with writhing darkness that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. The images showed entire sections of the planet's core being consumed by spreading black tendrils. The containment barriers are failing, Lirelay said. Our scientists estimate we have perhaps 6 months before the hunger breaks free. When it does, it will consume every psychic being on Ethros in a matter of days. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Why hasn't your council told us about this? Surely the other galactic civilizations could help somehow. The council believes that admitting our weakness would invite conquest by other species, Lirelay replied. Bitterly, they would rather die with dignity than ask for help. Valdris especially thinks that involving primitive species like humanity would be a betrayal of everything we stand for. But you disagree. I have studied your people, Commander Morrison. Humans think differently than we do. Where we see harmony, and order you see chaos and possibility. Where we accept limitations, you find ways to overcome them. I believe your minds might hold the key to defeating the hunger. Jake frowned as he tried to understand. How could human thinking help against something that feeds on psychic energy? We're not even telepathic. Lirelei moved closer, and Jake could feel energy radiating from her crystal skin. That is exactly why you might be the answer. The hunger consumes organized psychic patterns. It feeds on the structured thoughts of advanced civilizations. But human minds are chaotic and unpredictable. You might be immune to its effects. And if we're not immune, then we all die together instead of my people dying alone, Lirelei said simply. Commander, I am asking you to do something that violates every law of my people, and probably yours as well. I want you to allow me to link our minds directly. Jake took a step back. The idea of having an alien consciousness inside his head was terrifying. But the desperate hope in Lirelei's glowing eyes made him hesitate before refusing. What exactly would this mind link involve, he asked. I will use my psychic abilities to connect our thoughts temporarily. You would experience what it is like to be Zephyrian, and I would experience human consciousness. The process is dangerous for both of us. Your mind could be damaged by energies it was never meant to handle. I could be contaminated by human thought patterns that would make me unable to function in Zephyrian society. Jake thought about his crew waiting back in their quarters. Amy had trusted him to keep them safe. Ben was probably working on some new engineering project. Dr. Grant would be analyzing the data they had gathered. They were all depending on him to make the right decision. If I agreed this, what happens next? Jake asked. We attempt the link here and now. If it works and human consciousness proves resistant to the hunger, then we find a way to warn the galaxy. If it fails, then you return to your ship and leave Ethros before the containment fails. And if the Council discovers what we've done, they will exile me and probably execute you. As a contaminating influence, Lirelei said matter-of-factly, the neural link process is forbidden except in the most extreme circumstances. No Zephyrian has ever attempted it with an alien mind. Jake walked to the chamber's crystal wall and looked out at the city below. Thousands of Zephyrians went about, their daily lives unaware that their world was doomed. In 6 months, this beautiful civilization would be nothing but empty crystal spires unless someone found a solution. Commander Morrison, Lirelei said softly, I know I am asking you to risk everything based on the desperate hope of someone you barely know. But I have watched your species for years through our long-range sensors. Humans do not give up even when faced with impossible odds. That stubborn refusal to accept defeat might be exactly what we need. Jake turned back to face her. What do you need me to do? Relief flooded across Lirelei's features. Sit in the center of the room and try to keep your mind open. I will handle the technical aspects of the link. Whatever you experience, do not try to resist, or you could be seriously injured. Jake sat cross-legged on the crystal floor and tried to relax. Lirelei knelt across from him and placed her hands on either side of his head. Her crystal skin felt warm against his temples, and he could feel energy building around them. Beginning. The link now, she whispered. The world exploded into light and sensation. Jake felt his consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of his skull. Suddenly he could sense every living thing in the city below. The minds of thousands of Zephyrians pressed against his awareness like a vast ocean of thought, but it was not painful or overwhelming as he had expected. Instead, it felt like coming home to a place he had never been before. The collective consciousness of the Zephyrian people was beautiful in its complexity. Each mind was a unique note in a symphony of thought that had been playing for millennia. At the same time, Jake felt Lirelei's awareness entering his own mind. She explored his memories and emotions with the wonder of someone discovering a new world. He felt her surprise at the chaotic nature of human thought and her fascination with concepts that were foreign to Zephyrian thinking. The link deepened, and Jake began to understand things that no human had ever known. He saw the true history of the Zephyrian people and their long struggle to master the energies that flowed through the galaxy. He felt their fear of the hunger and their growing desperation as the containment barriers weakened. But Lirelei was experiencing something even more profound. Through Jake's memories, she felt human emotions for the first time. She experienced anger at injustice and hope in the face of overwhelming odds. She felt the fierce loyalty that humans showed to their friends and the stubborn determination that drove them to attempt impossible tasks. Most importantly, she felt something that Zephyrians had never experienced: the ability to act as an individual rather than as part of a collective consciousness. For the first time in her life, Lirelei understood what it meant to make a choice based on personal conviction rather than group consensus. The link lasted only minutes, but when it ended, both Jake and Lirelei were fundamentally changed. Jake could still sense the psychic energy that flowed through the Crystal City, though he could not manipulate it. Lirelei found herself thinking in new ways that would have been impossible before. "It worked," she whispered in amazement. "I can feel the difference in how you think. Your mind creates patterns that the hunger cannot predict or consume. You might actually be immune to its effects." Jake rubbed his temples as the last traces of the link faded. "What about you, Princess? How do you feel?" Lirelei stood, and Jake was surprised to see that her movements were different now. Where before she had flowed like water, she now moved with the purposeful stride of someone who had made a decision. "I feel like I understand what it means to choose my own path," she said, "and I choose to save my people even if it means destroying everything we have been before." She moved to the chamber's wall and pressed her hand against the crystal surface. "Commander Morrison, the real fight is just beginning. Will you help me convince your people to risk everything to save a world that most of them have never seen?" Jake thought about Amy and Ben and Dr. Grant. He thought about the billions of humans back on Earth who knew nothing about the Zephyrian crisis. Then he thought about the beautiful Crystal City below and the thousands of beings who would die if the hunger escaped. "Yes, Princess," he said finally. "I'll help you save your world." Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship Meridian and watched the alien world grow larger on the main screen. Ethros looked like a giant crystal ball floating in space with purple clouds swirling around it. The planet sparkled with strange lights that moved in patterns across its surface. Jake had seen many worlds during his 20 years in the Earth fleet, but nothing like this. "Distance to orbit in 30 minutes, sir," reported Amy Carter from the pilot's seat. She was the best pilot Jake had ever worked with, and he trusted her completely. Her hands moved quickly over the controls as she adjusted their approach vector. "All systems green, Commander," called out Ben Torres from the engineering station. The young engineer had volunteered for this mission despite the risks. His dark eyes showed excitement mixed with nervousness as he monitored the ship's systems. Dr. Lisa Grant looked up from her science station where she had been studying the readings from the planet below. "The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases, Jake. These Zephyrians seem to use pure energy for almost everything, including their cities and transportation." Jake nodded and activated the communication system. "This is Commander Morrison of the Earth vessel Meridian requesting permission to enter Ethros orbital space. We come in peace for the scheduled diplomatic meeting." The response came immediately, but not through their radio systems. Instead, a voice seemed to speak directly into their minds with a musical quality that made Jake's teeth ache. "Welcome, humans. You are cleared to approach the northern continent. A guide will meet your vessel." Amy shivered and rubbed her temples. "I hate it when they do that telepathy thing. It feels like someone walking around inside my head. Get used to it, Carter." "We'll be dealing with it for the next several days," Jake replied. He had experienced Zephyrian telepathy before during the initial contact 6 months ago. It still made him uncomfortable, but he had learned to tolerate it. The Meridian descended through the purple atmosphere, and Jake got his first close look at a Zephyrian city. Massive crystal spires rose from the ground like frozen lightning with bridges of pure energy connecting them. Vehicles that looked like balls of light moved through the air between the structures. There were no roads or mechanical transports anywhere to be seen. "Landing platform coordinates received," Amy announced. "Taking us down now." The ship touched down on a platform made of what looked like solid light. Jake could see figures approaching. from the nearest spire. They moved with a graceful gliding motion that seemed to ignore gravity. As they got closer, Jake could make out their features. The Zephyrians were tall and thin with skin that looked like living crystal. Their faces were angular with large eyes that glowed with inner light. They wore robes that seemed to be made of energy itself and shifted colors as they moved. Jake had seen pictures before, but meeting them in person was still striking. The leader of the group stepped forward, and Jake felt the familiar mental touch of telepathic communication. I am Counselor Valdres. Welcome to Ethros Commander Morrison. Your people's request for this meeting was most unusual. Jake stepped down from the ship followed by his team. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Counselor. Earth hopes this will be the beginning of a long friendship between our peoples. Valdres studied Jake with those glowing eyes. Your species is very young, Commander. We have watched your expansion across the galaxy with great interest. Some of my people wonder if humanity's rapid growth might pose a threat to the established order. We seek only peaceful relations and mutual benefit, Jake replied carefully. He had been briefed about Zephyrian concerns regarding human expansion. Many alien species seem nervous about how quickly humans spread to new worlds. Perhaps. We shall see. Valdres turned toward the crystal spire. Follow me. The council awaits. As they walked, Jake noticed another figure approaching from a side passage. This Zephyrian was different from the others. Where Valdres and his companions moved with formal dignity, this one seemed to flow like water. Her crystal skin had a bluish tint, and her energy robe shifted through shades of silver and gold. Commander Morrison, she said, and Jake was surprised to hear actual speech instead of telepathy. Her voice had a musical quality, but it was definitely audible words. I am Princess Lirale. I wanted to greet you personally before the formal proceedings begin. Valdres looked displeased. Princess, your presence is not required at this time. The council will handle the preliminary discussions. Of course, Counselor, Lirale replied, but Jake caught something in her tone. She was being polite, but there was an undercurrent of disagreement. I simply wish to welcome our guests properly. Jake found himself studying the princess more closely. Where the other Zephyrians seemed distant and formal, she projected something warmer. Her glowing eyes met his directly, and he felt a brief touch of her mind. It was different from Valdres's formal telepathy. This felt more like curiosity than official communication. The honor is ours, Princess, Jake said with a slight bow. We're grateful for your people's hospitality. Lirale smiled, and Jake was surprised to realize he could read the expression despite her alien features. Your journey from Earth was long, Commander. Perhaps you would like to see some of our city before the meetings begin. I would be happy to serve as your guide. That won't be necessary, Princess, Valdres interrupted. The humans need to prepare for the council session. There will be time for cultural exchange later. Jake sensed tension between the two Zephyrians, but couldn't understand its source. He decided to be diplomatic. We appreciate both offers. Perhaps after we've had a chance to settle in, we could take advantage of the princess's kind invitation. The group entered the crystal spire through an opening that simply appeared in the wall as they approached. Inside, Jake saw that the entire structure was hollow with platforms of crystallized energy extending from the walls at different levels. Zephyrians moved between the platforms by simply stepping on the beams of light that carried them up or down. Your technology is impressive, Dr. Grant commented as they were lifted to an upper level. How do you maintain structural integrity in buildings made of energy? Energy is more stable than matter when properly controlled, Lirale replied. Your people use solid materials because you cannot manipulate energy directly. We learned long ago that thought can shape reality if one has sufficient understanding. Ben Torres shook his head in amazement. We're still trying to figure out how to make fusion reactors work reliably, and you're building cities out of pure energy. Each species develops according to its nature, Lirale said. Your people excel at working with physical materials and mechanical systems. We focus on energy manipulation and mental disciplines. Both approaches have value. Jake noticed that Valdres seemed less pleased with this comparison. The counselor's thoughts brushed against Jake's mind with what felt like disapproval. The princess is too generous in her assessment. Human technology is primitive by our standards, though it has a certain crude effectiveness. They were shown the quarters that were essentially rooms carved from crystal, with furniture made of solidified light. Jake had to admit it was beautiful, even if it felt strange to sit on a chair made of energy. Amy tested the bed and pronounced it surprisingly comfortable. The council will convene in 2 hours, Valdres announced. Please use this time to prepare your proposals. The princess will return to escort you to the meeting chamber. After the counselor left, Jake gathered his team. Initial impressions? Their tech is way beyond ours, Ben said. But Dr. Grant's right about one thing. They seem to have put all their development into energy manipulation. I didn't see any mechanical backup systems anywhere. The princess seems more friendly than the counselor, Amy observed. Though I got the feeling there's some kind of disagreement between them about us being here, Dr. Grant nodded. The energy readings I'm getting are incredible. Their entire civilization seems to run on psychic energy converted to physical force. It's like they've turned their minds into power sources. Jake looked out the crystal window at the city below. Remember, people were here to establish diplomatic relations. Let's focus on finding common ground rather than comparing technologies. But even as he said it, Jake wondered what humanity could possibly offer to beings who could reshape reality with their thoughts. The Zephyrians clearly saw humans as primitive newcomers to the galaxy. This mission might be more challenging than anyone back on Earth had imagined. As if summoned by his thoughts, Princess Lirelei appeared in the doorway. Commander Morrison, would you walk with me? There are things about my people you should understand before you meet the council. Jake followed her out into the corridor, wondering what she wanted to tell him that couldn't be said in front of the others. Whatever it was, he sensed it was important. The princess moved with obvious purpose, and her earlier formal manner had been replaced by something more urgent. Tell me, princess, what should I know about your people that the briefings didn't cover? Lirelei stopped walking and turned to face him. For a moment, her crystal features seemed almost vulnerable. Commander Morrison, my people are dying, and I believe you humans may be the only ones who can save us.